Good morning, and welcome to another inspiring episode of the Good Morning Minute podcast, where we start the day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of our special partnership with the Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God has designed for them. Our mission is simple yet powerful, empowering life purpose, because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and the generations to come. So friends, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps towards purpose with our incredible guest. Our guest today is Joey. Joey, welcome to the Good Morning Minute.
Thank you for having me, Angelina. I'm so delighted to be with you today.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm excited to get to know you a bit more. But before we do so, why don't you take just a few moments and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Thank you so much. So I'm Dr. Joey Weisler. I just conferred my PhD back in May 2025. We are now in August. I was going to say October because I'm recording on my podcast 3 months out. So we're only in August 2025. And I just conferred my PhD in English, but with a focus on trauma studies and trauma theory, with a really kind of divine focus on safe classrooms. I'm also an educator, and my homebred area is the city of Parkland, Florida. And some of our listeners may know Parkland on the map infamously because of the mass tragedy that happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in the year 2018 on
Mhm,
Valentine's Day.
mhm,
That was my alma mater.
mhm,
I had graduated from Stoneman Douglas in 2013, a couple years before that. But during 2018, as a master's student and post-college graduate, I was in the process of substitute teaching around the city, mostly within the Parkland schools, and found myself at their feeder middle school, my middle school as well, as a substitute on that day, knowing teachers, students, coaches, and community members who were affected by that day by being either on campus, killed in the tragedy, or
mhm,
activists thereafter. And because of that, I really found a need to pivot my focus and what it means to speak on the behalf of students and keep their classrooms safe, especially when I began my first time, or rather first experience in teaching at that same middle school that fall of August 2018.
mhm. Wow. Wow. Well, Doctor, should I call you Dr. Weisler? Should I call you Joey? How do you want me to address you?
Whatever's gonna be most comfortable for you.
Okay, either or. Man, I try to break, I just try to break that heaviness with that lighthearted question there. But wow, that is definitely a defining moment of pain to have experienced that and to have it be so personal with, having experienced those education centers as your own upbringing and
Yes.
childhood experiences. Wow. Um, okay, well, usually start with an icebreaker, Joey, but and I know that we kind of just went into it and it's really heavy, but let's backtrack a little
I'm
bit.
an open book about
All
whatever
right.
is
But
on the table.
just to get things started, I would like to ask you, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I love exactly what we're doing now. I love having conversations. And honestly, Angeline, when I saw, or rather when I learned about your podcast, I almost felt like an imposter coming to approach you to be on your show because when we talk about moments of pain,
Mhm,
I was not in pain when that tragedy happened. I need to be very clear that I was never in danger. I was in no position of pain. I wasn't even on the
mhm,
campus
mhm,
where it had happened. I was next door, very safe, tucked away at their feeder middle school. But according to the research that I've done for my dissertation, the way that we can define trauma without being too trivial is being exposed to a moment or an event that causes a response from the body itself.
mhm,
And because of that, I've noticed that just what I witnessed as a community member from that traumatic event really impacted the way I think about myself as a teacher, essentially,
mhm,
especially in those formative and opening years. I always say that kindergarten is the most important year of schooling because
mhm.
kindergarten sets that foundation for how a student will enjoy school for years to come. And it's kind of like a bit of a domino effect if you have that weak foundation in kindergarten. I had a beautiful kindergarten experience, and that's why I teach today. My
Mhm.
first year of teaching, however, was quite the opposite, and I had a very, very turbulent first year of teaching, which is also what brings me to today's conversation. And I think just understanding that, again, it's always that domino effect. Like every single year, the first week of school for us is in about 2 weeks from now. And I'm always in the back of my mind wondering, like, wow, could this year end up being like year one? I never
Mhm.
know. So to unwind from those moments, coming in and having conversations about people who can just validate their own experiences and connect to my own is what
Mhm.
brings me in a position to move forward.
Wow. That's I like talking to. I like just hearing other stories and just kind of knowing that, you're not the only one out there that's kind of gone through some stuff or, experienced it. Um, and I would love to talk about your first teaching moment of challenge, but I just kind of going back to how things were opening. I mean, it's so scary nowadays with sending your children to school. Like all my children are adults now, but they all went through the public school systems. And I remember when my youngest, who is now 19, and living on his own, when he was a senior in high school, to think about, is someone gonna come into my school and threaten to harm us, or is my life at risk? Like that was never something that I had to worry about growing up, but to hear it come out of my son's mouth, as a senior, I mean, that just shocked me. So, not never having experienced any moments like that, but definitely hearing them, and seeing the tragedy, unfold, like with news coverage and all of that stuff, it does impact you, and it does affect you. Um, and in that moment, I kind of was like, wow, he's right. I'm praying over my kid. I just need to make sure he's safe when I leave him at school. Man, okay. So let's talk about that challenging moment in your life. Like, how did it impact you?
So just to be clear with the question, are we asking for moments that led up to it or kind of what happened after that?
However you want to unfold it, it's all
Definitely.
up to you.
I'm going to watch the time because this is a pretty climatic response that I like to give with this.
Yeah, go ahead. And you know what? Don't worry about the time. We're having a conversation.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So let me preface that the tragedy happened in my community in February 2018.
Hmm.
And to timeline how the sequence of events progressed, we're looking at about a 22-month window. How many months are in a year? 12, 12. Okay, yeah, 22 months. We're talking from February 2018 to December 2019, within that whole umbrella window there. What's important for me to mention, and I introduce my own classes with this on the first day of school, because whenever I teach college, which is also important to note, so I'm not walking into a sixth grade class, I'm like, hey, this happened. It's always a
Hmm.
college classroom. And it's important for them to see that because in my literature spaces and in my writing spaces, we actually write about things like this. And I don't want students to be like, oh, we're writing about suicide, but I explain why to them. So
Hmm.
February was the tragedy. And exactly 90 days later, that May, I got a phone call that one of my closest friends from high school had passed away by suicide from their twin sister. And I had so much guilt from that because
Hmm.
as someone who felt very close to this person, it was like, what could I have either done or said or known to maybe save that person's life? I didn't know at the time what kinds of questions to ask, what kinds of signs to look for. And in going forward, it was like, Sue Klebold, who's the mother of Dylan Klebold, the Columbine High School shooter of 1999, when her son passed away, she said, how could I not have known? How could I have missed that? And to me, that's
Hmm.
exactly what I was plagued with. Just not only was it just the shooting now, but now it was also losing my friend from that same school, by the way. And it was like, how could I not have known? How could I not have seen something like that coming and tried to stop it? And I think one thing I've really had to come to terms with now, 7 years out, is knowing that maybe I couldn't have stopped it. I'll never know. But
Hmm.
the fact that maybe I could, I still think about that quite often. And the vow that I made at that time was that when I began my first year of teaching, that I would ensure that I would never see blood on my hands from one of my students on one of my students' behalf.
Mm.
And I wanted to be so positive that I could be that person, that superhero who could save every child in front of me and pull the pain from them.
Mm.
My first position was eighth grade English. That is not a good combination for the
Mm-mm.
intentions that I was carrying. And I think what it came down to over the course of that year, I began in the same city where this tragedy happened. That was for a part-time interim position for a teacher on maternity leave. It was a lovely group of students, but everyone was on eggshells after the tragedy had just happened directly next door 6 months prior. I mean, on
Mm.
9/11 that year, we couldn't even really address the events of 9/11 because the amount of trauma that could still trigger the students in talking about a mass events like that
Mhm.
was still making a lot of folks very uptight. So it was a lot of just trying to experiment with the tools that we didn't have. That spring, now in January 2019, I spent a year moving to the other part of the district where they knew that this tragedy had happened. They had community members who were quite close with ours back from home, but the protocols in place weren't really helping us to move forward. And
Mm.
I felt, and I say this not to like victimize myself, but to really tell it how I saw it. I felt very victimized to be there because I was often labeled to be that guy from Parkland. My first year mentor told me on February 14th that year, it was the first anniversary, 2019. She says, "Hey, we know that today was a bad day for you a year ago from today, but Valentine's Day is supposed to be happy, so don't ruin it for anyone else around here."
Wow.
And that was one of many, many kind of remarks that I received from working at that institution.
Mm.
The Oedipus moment where the ground fell beneath my feet at the end of that first year, December 2019, was when I had to resign from my position because I frankly confused my role. I thought my goal was to be the superhero teacher, the therapist, the one who kept the students safe, their end all be all. When I see they're in crisis, and because students understood my intention, like, oh, we can come forward and tell him about our suicidal tendencies, he will see us become aggressive and know how to direct us because maybe they will. I did have students point to others and say, oh, they'll be the next school shooter one day. My classroom was that place where students would tell me that they felt a sense of safety.
Mm.
I did not realize, or I did not come to understand, that my role was not to be a savior. It was not to be a superhero. It was simply to be a caring human being
Mm.
who kept those students safe, comma, for now, keeping them safe for now. And I think about that because I don't think that anybody actually goes into education to deliberately harm the person in the school.
Mhm.
And I hope I didn't do that. But in working to be trauma informed, I definitely talked back to administration, and no administrator wants to hear what they're doing wrong from the rookie player of all people.
Mm.
So that did not work in my favor.
Mhm.
When I constantly saw dysregulated students, I would go to admin and say, hey, if you don't help them, I will. And if I can help them, you better step up and do better. No one wants to hear that.
Mm.
But at the time, it was like, listen, I was in Parkland. I lost my friend to this, and these are the steps I'm going to take to change it. And you can't
Mhm.
stop me. But they did
Mhm.
stop me. And that was the Oedipus moment that brings me to this conversation today. That brings me to a whole PhD in trauma and safe classrooms because as educators, we're not superheroes, but we're caring people. And 7 years later, I still do everything I can to understand that and keep my classroom safe.
Mm. Wow. That is that's amazing. And just the reflection that you have, in those moments is beautiful. And I love that you're using the word trauma informed because I'm in child welfare. I've been so for the past 13 years, so in different capacities. And we, from the start, have always tried to understand what trauma does in a child's life as far as decision making, forming identity, things like that, and really peeling it back because when I first stepped into it, it was a lot of that old mentality of, well, they're just bad kids and they don't want to listen and their behavior, they had just linking them to the behaviors as bad kids and those things, and to really understand it's not the behavior but it's the question, what happened to you, and
Exactly.
to go there and talk about this could lead, I mean, they could be so entrenched in the emotional trauma of the things that they're trying to unpack or resolve or understand, that it could lead to a suicide attempt, in that capacity. And that's amazing that you are so far ahead of your time and trying to bring that into the schools, and now doing that, bringing it into the schools. um, Man, I remember running for school board a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. And here I am, a child welfare person. All my kids have gone through the public school system. I myself experienced the public school system. And then to understand like all the elements that come along with that, and being a woman, being a girl, and all those things in there, how things like a teacher who understands and who is, like you stated, a caring, compassionate human
Yes.
that can just offer a safe space in that moment can change the world for someone. I know it did for me when I was 18, and I'll just kind of disclose that trigger warning for anybody listening. But when I was 18, I and a senior in high school, I was at this moment of just total despair where I just didn't know what it was all for. I didn't know where it was all going, and I was ready to quit on myself, quit on life and everything. And I did attempt. But I did have a teacher who knew me well enough to call me at home when I should have been at school. She called me at home and she was like, "Hey, you can do this. Like you're smart, and you can do this. Just come back to class. Don't quit. This is your senior year." And if it hadn't been for her, I think I would have dropped out and other things might have happened. But like that was the first time I ever had someone intentionally reach out with some purpose and say, "Hey, you can, let's try it. Let's keep going. You got this." Because I wasn't getting it at home. And I wasn't one of those kids that really talked. And honestly, you probably wouldn't know that I was struggling because I was so compliant as a child that I kind of just slid under the radars a lot too. But I appreciate that, you're bringing this into the education space. Um, so in this moment, you're realizing that you're not supposed to be the savior. You're not supposed to be the teacher
Yes.
superhero. Uh, so what was that growing season like for you as you were starting to step into your doctoral? Like, what was all of that led up to it?
Thank you so much for that. And first of all, I really appreciate your story as well, where I connected the fact that I've also taught a class of Angelina's before as well. And I actually had a student call me yesterday. He is now a 20-year-old rising sophomore in college who took my class that eighth grade year in
Mm,
2019. And he called to share some news about an award he's going to be receiving from his collegial work later on this
mm,
fall. But he said to me, I wanted you to be the first person I call because I don't think I could have become part of this major. He's a communication major. He said, I
mm,
don't think I would have become a communication major without your eighth grade English class. And it makes us realize that as educators, we don't always know the impact. We don't always know that ripple effect or that domino effect,
mm,
especially in a class like mine, which is very humanities driven. I'm the writing teacher. And there's that fine line
mm,
in the writing class, and a lot of my dissertation talks about this too, where we invite emotions into academic work. That's pretty much the whole topic of my dissertation, 300 pages of ways to invite emotions into academic writing. And I find that the lines can get quite blurry with that as well. in
Mhm.
comparison to, for example, the math class, where y will always equal mx plus b when you're determining the slope. And so what happened in that period in between leaving my position and starting my doctoral degree, first of all, I began a new adjunct position 4 days later. So I need to
Mhm.
make that clear, where I really didn't have time to wallow, but rather just reflect while I was already moving forward in the moment because I left on Thursday. And by Monday, I'm already teaching a brand new class at a brand new college.
Mhm.
And that was really crazy to think about that. And it was lovely. I mean, crazy as in the timeline. And I was really, really blessed to have stepped into a new role so quickly and move forward on what did become my latest journey. But during that window, I had to become the student that I sought to inspire.
Mhm.
Now it's January 2020. So if we're thinking about how the world looked at that time, 2 months away from a total global shutdown, and when that happened, I realized that I could spend that time really reflecting on what that moment was all about. So the timeline is January 2020, and that is 2 months before we had a total global shutdown.
Mhm.
And during that time, now I was extremely blessed that I'm actually now accumulating multiple college courses to teach over multiple schools during that window. So while other fields were losing employment, I was actually kind of gaining employment, which was really, really another blessing for me. But during that window, I stopped what I was thinking in terms of, wow, that first year coulda, shoulda, woulda. All the mistakes in terms of, wow, maybe if I did this with that student instead of that with that student, in terms of what I thought was keeping them safe, blah, blah, blah. There was one student where I went to admin and I said, "Are you aware about?" And the parent was actually an employee there. And the parent said, "Thank you so much. You're really helping my child. But if that happens again, leave admin out of it. Just come right to me." And I
Mhm.
realized the mistakes that I had made by involving admin in their own mistakes. And in terms of reflecting about that, I created an entire framework for a new television show that I'm working on. I have a whole chapter in my dissertation dedicated to Hollywood films like Dead Poet Society,
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
Freedom Riders, Dangerous Minds, To Soar with Love, the hero teachers of Hollywood, and what they all did as writing teachers, mind you, all of them except for Stand and Deliver, are pretty much films
Mhm.
on writing. What they did to become caring figures for their students. Not they think of themselves as saviors, but they're really just really lovely, caring people. Some of them had lovely endings. They triumphed. They got their
Mhm.
classrooms to themselves. All of them had administrative resistance. Only one teacher is asked to leave, and that's John Keating from Dead Poet Society. But he too had an impact on his students who stood on their desks and said, "Oh, Captain, my captain." They saluted their captain. And I
Mhm.
thought about John Keating when I was writing my own story as well, for similar tropes like that.
Mhm.
And when I'm writing this series out, what made me really process the moments and be in that moment is actually going back to read those journals. I journal nightly and being like, wow, look at these entries from fall 2020, no, 2019. And in truth, I cried almost every single day because I had no idea if I was helping my students or not.
Mhm.
And in doing so, I really felt disconnected to the purpose I came in to do as an educator.
Mhm.
I remember even saying to my assistant principal and my department chair in October, November of that year, mind you, I had been at the school now for 10 months. They
Mhm.
came up to my room to help me figure some things out. And I think it was a very destructive, rather a constructive meeting. And one of the reasons why it was so destructive is because I set the tone by admitting to them, I said to them, I feel as if my paradigm of this fantasy of being a teacher has completely shattered in front of you. And now I'm just sitting here just totally disillusioned. I don't
Mhm.
mean that helped the cause, but another problem is that I was also way too honest about things like that with my superiors as a cry for help, not a cry for shame. And in return, I
Mhm.
received shame. So
Yeah.
in that time, I journaled this entire series out. We're actually in the process currently of figuring out how it can become an actual show, like an Abbott Elementary meets Freedom Writer sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
and get that distributed. But meanwhile, I began my dissertation program feeling like for the first time I had a fighting chance as a person and as a scholar to figure out what a safe classroom looks like, especially a safe writing classroom. And I figured out the ways that we can do that are not by, again, saving children or saving students, but just by being caring people who have the intent to keep students safe, comma, for now in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And I love that because you're really just kind of tearing it back down to the humanity of being, right? Being a human, and loving people in their space and in their moment, and that those people being children, who are the most vulnerable.
Right.
I work with so many of them. Um, wow, that is just an amazing story. And I know in the beginning you started with like, I feel like an imposter, but honestly, no, you've gone through a really challenging moment that has really birthed something beautiful from, within you, your passion, so much so that you are trying to implement a change in your own right, in your own area.
Thank you.
And I can't wait. I can't wait to see the TV show. I can't wait to
Yes.
see the things that come from it. Oh, wow. Well, I ask you, so let's talk to that person that may be out there that is kind of in that in-between moment. Maybe it's that person you once were where you're standing up against your admins and you're trying to speak for justice, you're trying to speak for, you know, the children and implementing this change that isn't the school system just isn't quite ready for. What would you tell that person? What kind of advice would you give that person?
I just thought about that this morning. So I need to pause for a second and think about what was
Sure,
I thinking to myself.
sure.
I would tell that person, okay, I remember now. Again, I believe that to that person, whatever game you're playing, you're choosing rules for the right reason. I thought I chose my rules for a good reason. Again, like I mentioned, nobody goes into education to harm
Hmm.
children. Nobody goes through a trauma hoping that they don't come out okay. And I think in terms of education, and Angelina could attest to this as well as somebody who's worked in child welfare, it's a very sad day when the leaders choose bureaucracy over well-being.
Yeah.
And I think if I would have understood that sooner, maybe all of that at the very end could have been completely avoided. And the reason why I say I'm an imposter is because, again, I was not in the building where the shooting had happened.
Hmm.
My friend died by suicide, but that is something that is separate from what I carry on my shoulders. What I do carry on my shoulders is from that, how it affects my time in the classroom.
Hmm.
And with that, I still see that as my Oedipus moment, but it was like, it could have been so completely avoided if only. And here come all those if only statements, right?
Yeah.
But I think of if only I didn't do that. What if that child I was fearing about who could have taken their life did?
Mm.
And 7 years later, what would I be thinking then? Like, what would I rather still be leaning on emotionally 7 years later? The fact that
Mhm.
I'm no longer there, but maybe I saved these children, or I could have stayed there and comfortably so. But who knows what those children's futures would have been and how I would have
Mm.
felt in terms of the responsibility of that. So to that person out there, know that you chose your rules, and those rules are valid by your means. You could look back in 10 years and say, oh, wow, that thinking was lunacy. And maybe so. But in this moment, what you're thinking is valid for you at the time that you need it.
Mm.
And it's important to work through that to figure out how you're going to come out at the very end of it.
Mm. Such wisdom. It's great because it's true, as you go on in life and move past moments, your thinking changes, your outlook changes, just based on the experiences and the lessons that you've learned. So I think that's very wise, and such good advice.
Yeah,
What,
thank you.
Yeah. What does living with purpose look like for you now?
So living with purpose looks like now being at the university level. I teach multiple schools part-time, and at this coming semester in fall 2025, I am teaching 10 classes
Yikes.
across four different universities, and I've never felt more energetic and resilient and excited to be in the classroom and using all of these different ways of teaching writing to make it matter for students. Another
Mm,
mantra of mine is our moments matter. And that's something else I tried to emphasize to those students in that eighth grade year. I had a bulletin board that said, our moments matter. And on that bulletin board, I had class pictures from the year before. So remember, I taught from January to December. So when they came in
mhm,
August, they had my class pictures from May, and they knew all their little friends on the board. And they were so excited to one day see themselves on that board. P.S. That never happened. And I also had like baby pictures of me of like my first day of school in August, my second grade Halloween in October, and I would kind of rotate the board based upon seasons. But that was my emphasis. I said to them, our moments matter. And especially for those eighth graders, I too also had a major moment of burnout in high school
mhm,
where here I am approaching my junior or senior year, and mind you, nothing changed. But I thought to myself, wow, what if I tried to go out to dinner with my brother, my twin brother, a couple nights a week, rather than stay home and do that social studies paper that I may not remember in 10 years? And I realized that even though there's so many experiences that one can do in high school, I wouldn't enjoy any of those. I was comfortable staying in that area of just focusing on the academics.
mhm,
And even all these years later, I'm like, I'm okay with that. I wish I could have been in a position where I wanted to make more moments matter, but
mhm,
I'm also okay with that I didn't. I've come to terms with that. But I pay it forward by talking to my students about that. Make those moments matter. Make them matter, whatever that looks like for you. And I actually have them do every month now a self-care challenge where I'm like, go away from the classroom and participate around your campus. Be a part of a community and do
mhm,
things to make your time count. And I had to model that for them too. So what does it
mhm,
look like for me to move forward? It means being an active participant in the human experience. One of my favorite texts called The Perks of Being a Wallflower talks about just that. It says if you sit on the windowsill and you're just a wallflower spectating your life, you're going to miss out on so much. And the way to enjoy the human experience is to be someone who actively participates in
mhm,
that moment that we can coin to be the forever now, what's happening right now in this moment. And even being
mhm.
here today, showing up to this conversation is me participating in the moment because it gives me a chance to talk about that story in hopes that it reaches others as well.
Wow. Well, I'm sure glad that you are here sharing so much, and I'm learning so much, and I feel the passion behind your words and your story. I definitely do. So as we get closer to closing our conversation, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all my guests. It's a question of legacy and impact. If today were your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
Thank you so much for that. I would want to be remembered for trying my best for others. And like I mentioned, I got a phone call
Mm,
yesterday from a student who said, hey, this happened because of your impact 7 years later. That is very, very significant because there's
mhm,
a lot of days when I come home from work, even now, I'm like, I don't know if what I did today really mattered to those students because, I got that email from this student who wants this, and I got the email from that person who wants that. And I'm like, I don't know. So when those
mm,
little moments come about, as few and far between as they may seem to be from time to time, it it makes it worth it.
mm,
And I think that's the service that we all should understand is that to be present is to also inspire others. It's like inspire yourself and then inspire others. Stephen Covey, see the Stephen or Sean, their father son, 7 habits of highly effective people. There is an eighth habit that they talk about that says, step one, find your voice. But then step two, once you find your voice, use it to inspire others. And that's what I try and live by
mm.
trying to explore my own voice and using it to make it matter for others.
Hmm. I love that. And I'm glad that you're on the show as an educator because I know with my children, I encourage them to build relationships with their teachers because that's where you get that feedback that this is making a difference. They are paying attention, they are learning. Um, and even with the kids that I work with now, like build those relationships because and it's important because as we get older, we need to build relationships anyways. But
Absolutely.
when you do that, it definitely validates a lot of the hard work because all the lesson planning that you have to do, all the things, the grading papers, I mean, 10 classes that you're teaching. Wow. So yes, if you're out there listening and you're attending a university or you're attending a class somewhere, please build relationships with your educators. They need to know that it matters for sure. All right, Doc. Let's see here. My last question to you is if you could leave maybe a bit of truth or a word of encouragement to someone who's still trying to figure out their purpose in life, what would it be?
Let me pause for a second on that.
Sure.
I think, as I mentioned a little earlier, to just go through those moments. I would also say journaling. If a student
Yeah.
were to sit in front of me in my office, which they've done before, and they turned to me and said, other than visiting student counseling, like what could I do for myself? I would tell them to start a journal.
Mm,
I'll also mention that my late uncle was a 9/11 survivor. And it wasn't until I had went through Parkland that when I called my aunt and uncle who were in Manhattan, my aunt had actually recorded a home movie called The Days After 9/11, where she literally took her camera and walked around New York on September 12th, 13th, 14th, 2002, 2003, and a little ways after to show firsthand what that city looks like. It wasn't until I had gone through Parkland in 2018, when I
mhm,
was now 23 years old, that my uncle invited me for the first time to actually visit the site of the towers. I mean, I see them all the time. I actually live very close to them now in New York City where I teach, but he never went down there because he did not want to talk about it and he did not want to see it, so we never went either. And it wasn't until 17 years later, when I had my own tragedy, that they finally took me down there to say that your scars will turn into stars eventually. Your ashes will eventually turn into skyscrapers. And I learned at that time, while having a conversation with my aunt, that she actually kept very detailed journals, such as her home video during that time. She put it away.
mm, mhm,
She rarely watches it, but it actually wasn't until I invited them more recently than not. And to me, 5 years is pretty recent. So not until 2021, 2022, when I said to them, hey, come talk to my class today. We're talking about 9/11. Come zoom in and share some wisdom with us. She said that she went back and she watched that video and all of a sudden remembered things that she hadn't thought about in such a long time. And she was
mm,
glad she had that chance to do that, to be clear about that.
yeah.
So I will say to the person in that moment, capture that moment, however you see fit, write about it, document it, take out a tape recorder and just make some voice notes about it. Just somehow capture that moment and then tuck it away. If you need to, shred it, burn it, I don't know what that would look like, but if you needed to somehow gain some sort of power by ridding it, do that, but not yet. Keep it until you feel like you're moving through it,
Mm,
because once you write about it, you're getting a release. But I've held on to my notes from that time with that first year teaching. They're actually on this table to my left, because I know that if there's ever a time in my life, haven't been there yet, so I'm grateful. But if there ever were a time where like, wow, this matches what those emotions felt like in year one, then I know I can turn to those notes and read them as if it were my own personal toolkit of what I can do for myself to continue keeping myself happy and secure at that moment to move forward. It's like you're writing the toolkit or the handbook to moving yourself through that crisis. So if and or it should happen again, it's right there. The handbook's right in front of you. And you have a guide that can move you through. You've maybe done it before. Can you do it again? Well, you'll know because the handbook's in front of you.
Thank you for for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. It's conversations like this that remind us purpose isn't about perfection. It's about showing up and growing through the things that we go through. Every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute and through the Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So friend, wherever you are today, remember your purpose does have power and you're not walking alone. So until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, keep walking boldly into the life God has designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.
Thank you, everyone.